TorahCafe.com.
Good evening, friends. Fellow Landsleute in this continent we inhabit called the Jewish National Retreat, where at every turn there awaits a territory teeming with precious resources ready to be mined, and oceans of sparkling knowledge await us. I am here tonight to introduce the Sinai Scholars who will address us in just a few moments, and inter alia to frame their remarks with a few of my own. In late 1984, my husband, Rabbi Aaron Slonim, and I founded and have since then been directing what is today called the Rohr Chabad Center for Jewish Student Life at Binghamton. Doing the same thing for close to 35 years gives you a bit of perspective. It's been orientation season for the last few weeks at Binghamton, like at every other campus in this country. That means I have been meeting incoming students and their parents at the campus service fair, where we, like so many other campus organizations, have a table. There's a predictable trajectory to these conversations, and they fall, not always neatly, but closely enough, into one of two categories. If the kid is really interested, they will come bouncing over to our table, sign up, schmooze, get the information about our freshman cruise, high-five me, and I will see them during the first week and, God willing, every other week, multiple times during their 4 years at Binghamton. There is a high chance I will be at their wedding and perhaps a brit and perhaps a bar mitzvah. One of the greatest thrills of late has been celebrating at the weddings of the children of our alumni. In many cases, however, the kid at orientation has little interest or none, and the conversation with parents goes something like this. Do you have Yom Kippur services? To which in my old age, when I have little time to waste and even less patience, I have begun to reply as nicely as I can. Yom Kippur services are really not important or interesting to a student who is not interested in Friday night dinner and all the other events we run. But yes, we do host Yom Kippur services. But let's you and I have a conversation about how I might engage your child on a pedestrian Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, on any given week. Can we do that? It takes them a while to process what I'm saying, but already they're on to their second question, which is invariably, is there a problem with anti-Semitism, with BDS, etc.? I talked to them a bit about this. Thankfully, I'm able to reassure them with the facts on the ground in Binghamton. And then, having checked that off their list, they inevitably go to check out the refrigerator and microwave oven rental pavilion to my right, the athletics department across, the music and performing arts to the left. But me, I'm left to think about these conversations incessantly. I replay this on a loop. First, I start to scheme about how I can engage this particular young man or woman. Executing that plan will entail a lot of sleuthing, maneuvering, and a lot of praying. I have become very prayerful. There are so many variables: roommates, frat brothers, girlfriends, the kids on their floor, the lab partner. Will they even consider taking the first step and coming on Friday night? Will those stars align? If that happens, hopefully I can talk to them about taking the Sinai Scholars program. But I also think about the broader issues at hand. Let me, if I may, because I feel I'm among friends, let me be completely honest with you. BDS, in the conventional sense, that is the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, as it relates to our precious land of Israel, is not our most pressing problem. There, I have said it. And I know it's a heresy. But before you get upset with me, hear me out. Let me give you the facts. Out of 4,000 colleges in the U.S., BDS has been a significant problem with profound anti-Israel bashing at less than 40, albeit elite, campuses. In the last 13 years, from 2005 to 2018, a total of 119 votes have been taken on BDS measures. 76 were defeated. That's 64%. These votes were limited to a total of 64 schools. That's less than 3% of America's four-year colleges. Only 36 schools have approved a BDS resolution, and in the last 13 years, that represents 1% of U.S. universities. A strong case is being made by some that the Jewish communal public hand-wringing, calling this a crisis, is giving the small and underfunded movement undue attention and dramatizes its very small actual successes. I do not mean with this to say that anti-Semitism on campuses and off is not a real problem. Please understand me. In fact, I am extremely disturbed, in fact, I would say perturbed, by the extent to which BDS and every other iteration of anti-Israel sentiment has seeped into the realm of academia. The ivory tower is afire. We do have a problem, and there are many fine programs and organizations dealing with this. But here is what I have learned over the last 30 years on campus. Students who are not Jewishly engaged, who don't have a sense of Jewish identity, history, legacy, and destiny, forgive my French, don't give a damn about Israel. The great majority of Jewish college students do not know or care enough about Israel to become Zionist activists because they have a tenuous, if that, tie to their Jewish identity. Our real crisis is a widespread BDS of a different kind. A too large percentage of Jewish students on campus, our Jewish children, fall into one of three categories. B, this group is burnt out and bitter, or bored and brooding. They went to Hebrew school or received some other form of Jewish education, most often suffered a lackluster experience. They have in their minds and hearts been there and done that. They know everything they are convinced they care to know about Judaism. And in some cases, they harbor a little angry or animosity towards the Jewish community for reasons real or imagined. The second demographic is the D group. These kids are disinterested and disenfranchised. This demographic never went to Hebrew school. They got no Jewish instruction, and they have no interest. Their religion and the religion of their foreparents may or may not be atheism and liberal policy and politics. And then there's the S, satisfied with the status quo. These kids are just cruising along. They're Jewish, whatever that means. And they'll go to Yom Kippur services if it makes grandma happy. And they'll light the menorah on Hanukkah. And they'll eat our latkes and our hamantashen. But don't think for a second that dating exclusively Jewish is on their radar. What does BDS look like on a typical campus? Let's take Binghamton, where we have somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 Jewish kids. Let's take that as an example. Binghamton has, thank God, such a robust Jewish infrastructure that people tend to forget that the dangers of BDS lurk everywhere. And I mean everywhere, hiding in plain sight. I'll give you an example. If Chabad has anywhere from 350 to 400 kids on a Friday night, and Hillel has another 100, and some kids, let's say 50, are making Shabbat dinner in their apartments, where are the remaining 3,000 kids? Okay, there's another 500 to 700 kids who might attend a Shabbat dinner sometime during the semester, so they're in the loop. But where are the remaining 2,500? That's BDS. You get the picture. So what's to be done about this real BDS problem? If you ask me, my answer is unabashedly, unequivocally, CBD. Chachma, wisdom. Bina, understanding. Da'at, knowledge. The acrostic formed by these Hebrew words is Chabad. It's all a matter of education. But not just any type of education. It's not just wisdom. It's not just understanding. This is not about gaining tools and skills and being able to navigate a page of Talmud, although that helps. It has to be da'at, connected knowledge, visceral, living, pulsating, breathing, welcoming, joyous knowledge. Luckily for the Jewish people, George and Pamela Rohr are visionary investors. And I use that term advisedly because Mr. George Rohr absolutely disdains the appellation philanthropist. He maintains that he is an investor in the future of the Jewish people. An astute venture, I might add. An astute investor. His two main ventures are JLI and Chabad on Campus. But don't think for a second that he doesn't have a host of other holdings in his portfolio, much of which he dedicates in loving memory of his father and mentor, Mr. Sammy Rohr, whose yahrzeit we just marked this past Sunday. One of the initiatives of Chabad on Campus, in partnership with the Rohr Jewish Learning Institute, a love child, you might say, and Mr. Rohr's brainchild, is a program called Sinai Scholars, which is designed to give students who have never had a chance to learn about Judaism the opportunity to do so through the agency of 8 two-hour seminars, field trips, Shabbatons, etc. And the scholars are, of course, offered the opportunity to attend this retreat. 150 of them have taken up the offer this year. In a few minutes, you will have the opportunity to listen to two of our wonderful scholars. As you do, I want you to consider something profoundly important that will change the way you look at every young person for as long as you live. What I'm going to share now is based on the work and writings of Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan of blessed memory in his book, Made in Heaven. I want you to consider for a moment the ancestry of each young man and woman. Each one obviously had two parents. Go back another generation, and there are 4 grandparents. One more generation, and there are 8 great-grandparents. Continue in this fashion, and you will find 16 great-great-grandparents and 32 great-great-great-grandparents. The calculation then becomes a bit more difficult. A few minutes with a pocket calculator, and it becomes obvious that going back 10 generations, a person has 1,024 ancestors. Back 20 generations, there are over 1 million. To be exact, 1,048,576 ancestors. After this, the number becomes absurd. After 30 generations, the number of one's ancestors would be over 1 billion. After 40 generations, it would be over 1 trillion. The last number is obviously absurd. It is greater than the total number of people who have ever lived. No one can have more ancestors than there are people. The number simply means that the ancestral lines cross. Going back something like 40 generations, one will find the ancestors coming up again and again in different places on the family tree. But friends, take a moment to consider this. 40 generations is not a long time. If you consider the average generation to be about 25 years, 40 generations is only 1,000 years. This is a fascinating point. If we trace a single person's ancestry back for 1,000 years, we find he is descended from every generation, every human being alive at the time. To put it another way, it took the entire world population of 1,000 years ago to produce the young two scholars, the unique individuals you will see soon. Now, if the person is Jewish, this will be restricted to the Jewish world. Since there's around 14 million Jews, this entire process would take only 24 generations, 600 years. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to flash forward. It is time to take a hard look at our future, to what the Jewish world will look like in 600 years. I want you to think about the sobering fact. Less than 1/3 of Jewish children in contemporary America, in an age and political climate most supportive of religious expression, receives any type of Jewish instruction. As Jewish parents, as concerned leaders and laypersons, we must ask ourselves some simple questions. If we do not provide our children with the opportunity to learn of their rich heritage, who will recall our glorious history? Who will quote the scriptures? Who will chant the prayers? Who will sing the melodies? Who will croon the Shema to their children at night? Who will light the Shabbat candles? Who will be the light unto the nations? Who will fill a beautiful convention hall like this one in pursuit of Jewish learning? Simply stated, what, if any, kind of Jewish identity will our children have? Clearly, Jewish education needs to be our prime concern. Of late, Jewish thinking persons have been concerned with the future of American Jewry. Study after study, with more and more sobering statistics, are being published. The truth is that all the terms being bandied about, terms like community, continuity, consciousness, commitment, they all flow from another C word, chinuch, the uniquely Jewish term which connotes an all-pervasive Jewish educational experience where the Torah is not a subject, it is life. That is education that is authentic, an education that is modeled, that is all-encompassing, that is relevant. Tonight, I am the bearer of wonderful news. These two scholars you're about to hear from have experienced chinuch thanks to the Sinai Scholar program. True, we cannot rest on our laurels. We need much more investment of time and resources into chinuch, into chachma and bina and dat, into Chabad. We need many, many more young Jews who are passionate, engaged, and committed. But I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that with these scholars and the thousands of Sinai scholars that they represent, we have a bright, bright future. I've given you the numbers. Just do the math. So, if you will, if it's not too difficult for you, I'm going to ask you to rise and join me in giving a rousing welcome to the luminous Jewish world of tomorrow.
Shalom National Jewish Retreat and Shalom Sinai Scholars, especially the Green Group. My name is Joel Goodovitz, and to the great disappointment of my grandmother, I am single. I go to the University of Kansas, and I was a member of the Sinai Scholars class of 2015.
Hi, I'm Devin Smith, and I go to The Ohio State University. and I just completed the Sinai Scholars course this last semester.
It was a beautiful Friday in 5th grade. The sun was shining. Business was booming for lower school student council. We made over $7 and sold more than 15 Slinkies at school store in the morning. The girl that I had a crush on asked me if she could borrow my pencil in math class, which clearly meant that she liked me. And I had just accomplished the ultimate playground achievement of hitting Mrs. Franks' car with the inflatable rubber ball during our end-of-the-week kickball game. Officially, hitting her car was ruled an out by Mrs. Franks. But assuming that by out, she meant out of the park home run, us mischievous 5th graders tallied it in to the final score. It was truly a wonderful day to be alive. Sarah, notoriously one of the sweetest members of the class, came up to bat after me. Sticking to her usual strategy, Sarah kicked the ball lightly to third base. She ran her hardest, about 6 strides into her dash towards first base. Sarah tripped, fell on the concrete, and after a quick appraisal of the situation, began to cry. Just as quickly as the tears began to pour, I hurried over to the site of the skinned knee. Eager to help, I declared, "My dad is a dentist. Let me take a look."
I am a self-proclaimed question asker, soul seeker, and total life enthusiast. I juggle 1,000,001 passions, am always looking to try and learn new things, and am a firm believer that no outfit is complete without a smile. I'm from the hippie town of San Francisco, California, and stereotypically, I'm a tree-hugging vegetarian yoga instructor. Currently, though, I'm about to embark on an adventure known as senior year of college at The Ohio State University, where I study psychology and Spanish in the hopes that I can cheer some people up, change some lives, save the world, yada, yada, yada. My story starts on August 18th, 1997, when tiny 7-pound, 2-ounce screaming me popped my little head into this big old world. I was born into the most loving, fun, hardworking, sarcastic, and supportive household one could imagine. But because no story is complete without a few interesting details, I'll just let you know now that my mom is Jewish, but my southern bacon-loving daddy definitely isn't. However, when my sister and I were born, my parents decided to raise us Jewish. So, naturally, Christmas became the biggest holiday in my house, and occasionally we remembered to celebrate Passover. I didn't really know about Sukkot or even the history behind Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, but you bet I loved painting my Easter eggs each year. When it came time for my sister and I to have bat mitzvahs, my parents gave us the choice to have one or not. We both chose to have one so that we could throw that awesome party, but we only studied with a private Hebrew tutor for an hour each week for about 1.5 years leading up to our bat mitzvahs so that we could memorize a few prayers and earn that fiesta. But other than our bat mitzvahs and occasionally skipping school on the high holy days so my mom, sister, and I could go to a quick service and then go shopping, Judaism was not really a part of my life, and it never really bothered me.
The value of helping others is deeply rooted in our heritage. For the first 5 years of my life, I was blessed with a unique and truly amazing friendship. My best friend gave me the sweetest chocolates, made me laugh with pure happiness, and provided the most genuine love that I have ever received. He did all of these things and gave all he could to those around him, despite having everything taken from him when he was just a little boy. This best friend is my Zadie, grandpa of blessed memory. My booby, grandma, and Zadie were two of very few Jewish people from their communities in Poland who survived the atrocities of the Holocaust. Despite all of the torture, fear, and starvation that he experienced firsthand, The first words that my Zadie said upon his rescue from Buchenwald concentration camp on the afternoon of April 11th, 1945 were, "We have to find my little brother, Jack." Weighing less than 60 pounds at the time, he was barely able to move or think. Yet, his innate capacity to care for others had not diminished in the slightest.
When I first decided to come to Ohio State, I had no idea that I'd rediscover my Judaism there or that it could completely change my life. If anything, I thought I'd get to experience that cold white stuff called snow that doesn't really fall at home, and maybe I'd see some cornfields. But me, little free-spirited hippie girl, fall in love with a religion that sees tradition and structure as the path to a meaningful life? No way. But like my parents always tell my sister and I, we're not always right. That all changed, however, this past fall semester at Ohio State. One day, I was talking to my adorable Jewish grandmother on the phone when, for whatever reason, we began to discuss Judaism. She asked me if I knew why we celebrated Purim, and I embarrassingly replied, "Grandma, isn't that the one where we eat those triangle-shaped cookies?" After a quick, awkward giggle, she said, "Devin, I know that growing up in an interfaith household meant that you didn't get much of a Jewish education, but because we're such a small percentage of the population, wouldn't you want to be able to answer people's questions about us if they were to ask?" In that moment, where I realized that I, Devin Smith, was actually ignorant and oblivious about something gross, I decided that I needed to learn everything about it. So, I emailed the OSU Chabad House that very afternoon, introduced myself as an eternal question asker and answer seeker, and told them that I had a long, inexhaustible list of questions for them. The incredibly welcoming and brilliant Rebbitzin, Sarah Deitch, emailed me back and said she'd love to meet me for coffee. From the second we met and began this fascinating intellectual and spiritual banter, we completely hit it off, and I knew I'd found the correct next step on my life path. She told me that she'd love to study with me once a week starting spring semester, and that I should also sign up for a Jewish class called Sinai Scholars. So, without a second thought, I said yes to both.
Growing up, I've heard these stories about my Zadie and his remarkable faith and courage. And while I admired his stories so greatly, I was also living the life of a typical American teen. My priorities included girls, family, high school classes, girls, sports, and enjoying life. It seemed that, for the time being, there may have been a gap between the life that I was living and the kind of lifestyle that my Zadie lived and breathed every day. His committed study of Torah, his observance of the mitzvot, and his day-to-day life being enriched with Jewish observance. Judaism is what he woke up to, what he did throughout the day, and what he did before he went to sleep. But then, in every generation, we lose more and more elements of our heritage, and we stray further and further from who we are meant to be on this earth. This happens to many of us, and it happened in my life too. But surely, my dear Zadie must have been watching very closely from on high, as it was in college that things were set into motion that brought me to a new place. A place that was so close to him, and a place where he surely really wanted me to be. It was during my first week of college, as a new freshman, when I walked into the Chabad house. As I entered this space, I met the rabbi and his glowing smile, and I felt the warmth. Yes, both his physical body warmth when he embraced me with a hug, and the tangible warmth of love that radiates from his genuine fervor for meeting a fellow Jew. Noting the large beard, I asked myself in this moment, why is this very hairy stranger so excited to see me? After this meeting, I attended a Shabbat dinner. After a few of those, I signed up for Sinai Scholars. And 3 years later, I look back to see that same hairy stranger I met when I first got to college has changed my life.
When I first signed up for the Sinai Scholars class, it came from a place of deep curiosity, a desire to understand my people, my heritage, and my culture. What I did not expect, however, is that the course would completely change my life as well. Sinai Scholars wasn't just a class to learn about challah baking or the reasoning behind the 8 days of Hanukkah. Instead, it was a class structured to teach us about what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be part of this powerful family that has existed for centuries despite horrific hardship in a sometimes merciless world. By learning about our identities as Jews and delving deeper into what it means to us as individuals, I learned what it means to be Devin Rachel Smith. Dancer, Jew, poet, Jew, student, Jew, yoga instructor, Jew. I learned about what and who God expects me to be in this world, with my Judaism helping to guide and direct me in the chaotic, overwhelming world of a lost 20-year-old. If I was only half Jewish or kind of technically Jewish before, I'm now a Jew. Becoming more involved at the Chabad House, and specifically taking the Sinai Scholars Tier 1 course, has shaken up my entire life and has changed me for the better. Before I entered into this world of Jewish education, I was shrouded in the ignorance and Jewish illiteracy that often accompanies this majority non-Jewish secular world. Even when I wanted to know something about Judaism, I didn't know who to ask other than Google, and on top of that, I wasn't that comfortable with my Jewish identity. Since I grew up in an interfaith household, I've always had the unique opportunity to change my identity based on who I'm talking to, sometimes relying more on my Jewish identity, other times falling back on my somewhat Christian upbringing, and then occasionally being neither. I wasn't raised in an observant Jewish household, I didn't receive much of a Jewish education, and religion had never really been a significant part of my life. So why claim an identity that only ostracizes me from the majority?
Where did this come from? How did my beloved grandfather possess this superhuman courage and faith amidst the darkest of times in his life? And now, just 3 generations later, young Jews in America struggle so much with connecting to their Jewish identity. I know the answer, and I feel it in my soul. It was his steadfast commitment to the Torah and the mitzvot. It was the light of the Torah and the spirit of the mitzvot that carried him on and helped sustain and nourish his soul to survive and to strive to live another day.
Things are different now. Now I have gained enough Jewish knowledge to hold my own in conversations regarding religion and identity. And more than anything, I've learned the beauty of what it means to be a Jew. I know now that I and every single Jew in this room have a purpose in this world. We have a mission, a reason for being. This class taught me not to fear the ambiguity of young adult life, not to stress over the uncertainty of finding myself or somehow knowing exactly what I want to do with my life. Everything comes in due time. And until then, I can rest easy, knowing that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be when I'm supposed to be here. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be. And our purposes are already in full swing, with or without our acknowledgement of it.
My parents probably think that I joined the Mossad, because I go to Israel during every winter and summer break. Mom, do not worry. I'm only going to learn Torah. Because of the man with the beard, Rabbi Zalman, I've been to Israel 5 times, Palm Springs twice, New York twice, even Rhode Island, all in just 3 years. I have put on tefillin more times than you can count, using all 10 of your fingers, all 10 of your toes, and all of the fingers and toes of the players on your favorite sports team. I kiss the little box on the doorframe, the mezuzah, when I walk through the door. I love, cherish, appreciate, and look forward every single week to Shabbat. Not because Friday is the night when I can get drunkest with all of my friends, but because Shabbat is the day on which I most strongly connect with God, myself, and the people around me. Plus, that is still the night that I can get drunkest with my friends.
Every single day, we as Jews have to find the courage and strength to stand up in front of the world's majority as one of the chosen people. This used to terrify me, but now that Sinai Scholars has given me an incredible amount of Jewish pride and wisdom, I no longer feel the need to fall back on my once wishy-washy identity. I now joyfully, pridefully, and passionately stand up as a Jew, a Yid, one from a powerful minority of people. I went from being an uneducated Jew who hadn't heard of the holiday Sukkot to one who researches the Rambam and Hebrew Gematria in my spare time. I know, I'm cool. I have gained so much Jewish knowledge and wisdom through taking the Sinai Scholars course, but above all, I have learned about who I am. And if you ask any 20-year-old sitting in this room, they will tell you that is the ultimate gift.
What about Judaism? What about Chabad on campus? And what about Sinai Scholars made them such transformative experiences for me and so many of us in this room? What is the root of its potency and its strength? The reason is simple. It was bringing us back home, reconnecting with who I really am, helping me link my loop in the chain directly to my Zaydis is such a seamless and natural course to take. Zaydi, I have now come back home. Thank you, JLI. Thank you, Chabad on campus. Thank you, Sinai Scholars. Thank you, Zalman, Nechama, and my beloved Chabad house at KU. And most importantly, thank you, Zaydi, for planting the seeds for me to keep carrying on the torch of Torah, mitzvot, and Yiddishkeit, alive for my children, my grandchildren, and many, many generations of passionate Jews to come.
And thank you to the OSU Schottenstein Chabad House, where Sarah and Zalman Deitch have transformed my life in just the past 6 months. Thank you to my grandma, who has inspired me to never stop learning and growing. And most of all, to my parents, who have supported me through all of my vegetarian and yoga and Jewish journeys. Lastly, a big, zesty thank you to Sinai Scholars and to Mr. George Rohr for making this all possible.
Dear Grandpa,
dear Grandma,
here at the National Jewish Retreat, we promise to carry on the torch you have passed on to us. Fellow Sinai Scholars, who will be the next Bubbies and Zaydis if not us?